Hello there, good evening. Welcome to Look North, our top story tonight. A man pleads guilty to possessing a pressure cooker bomb at a hospital he worked at in Leeds. The 27-year-old from Roundhay denies planning to use the device. We'll have the latest from court. Also tonight, a £100 million spruce up of Leeds Bradford Airport's terminal will take off this year. And are you guilty of wish cycling? 80% of us are, apparently. We're doing the bins in Doncaster to find out more.
Sport out tea, out roll plum, right across the table, by gum.
And as one man's classes in Tight Talk are oversubscribed, we send Tom to Keighley so we can learn how to speak read.
And it looks as though we'll see another fine autumnal day tomorrow, but something much more unsettled and wetter on the way later this week. Join me for that week ahead forecast.
Hello, thanks for joining us on this Monday evening. A man accused of planning terrorist attacks on a hospital in Leeds and an RAF base in Harrogate has admitted possessing a pressure cooker bomb. Mohammed Rafouk was arrested in January outside the maternity ward of St James's Hospital, where he was employed as a clinical support worker. The 27-year-old today pleaded guilty to possessing an explosive, but denied planning to use it. Our Home Affairs correspondent Emma Glasby was in court.
Mohammed Farouk appeared in court here this afternoon and pleaded guilty to possessing an explosive, namely a pressure cooker bomb, in suspicious circumstances. That was at St James's Hospital in Leeds. But he denies intent to use it, pleading not guilty to possessing an explosive with intent to endanger life or cause serious injury to property. The 27-year-old, who's from Roundhay, also denied a charge of preparing an act of terrorism. Now, he was arrested back in January, accused of taking a homemade pressure cooker bomb to St James's Hospital in Leeds, where he was employed at the time as a clinical support worker. It is alleged by the prosecution that he manufactured or assembled an explosive device, that he used the internet to research and identify potential locations for an attack at St James's Hospital and at RAF Menwith Hill in North Yorkshire, and that he carried out reconnaissance of potential locations for an attack. Now today the judge, Mr Justice Hilliard, told potential jurors that Mr Farouk is accused of an alleged plan to target RAF Menwith Hill and St James's Hospital in a terrorist attack. Mr Farouk is due to stand trial here at Sheffield Crown Court later this week.
Emma Glasby reporting from Sheffield for us there. We're going to update you now on the impact of potentially dangerous concrete found in some of our schools. In September, you may remember that we reported that at least 7 schools in our region were affected by what's known as RAC. But the impact on pupils continues. One school in Scarborough won't receive new temporary cabins until March next year. And although some pupils return to class full-time today, others will have to wait. Michelle Lyons reports.
Bye, Mum. It's 13-year-old George's first day back at school since the summer holidays. But his younger brother William will have to wait a little longer before he walks through the school gates. They're both pupils at Scalby School in Scarborough, which is considered to be unsafe. 3/4 of its roof is made from reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, or RAC as it's otherwise known. Staff and students only found out days before autumn term, and students have been on a staggered return ever since.
We've had 2 weeks of putting scaffolding up and mitigation in some of the rooms on the first floor, and that's then allowed us to open up some of the ground floor rooms safely so that we could get the year 10s back in. Every day there's been another problem or another issue that we've had to solve, but we felt that was really important to do as quickly as possible for the sake of the community and the students, to get students back on site as quickly as possible.
Work is ongoing to get students back into full-time face-to-face education. Year 9 students were welcomed back on site today. Year 8 will return tomorrow, and Year 7 students still have to go to Scarborough University's Technical College until further notice.
Do you want a drink, boys?
For the past 6 weeks, George has been learning online with the rest of his Year 9 group, something he's got used to during the pandemic. But today, he was glad to be back at school.
So how was your day today, George?
Good, thanks. I did history, geography and English. It's a lot different when you sat in front of a teacher, not instead of sat in front of a screen. And it's like kind of nice to have one-to-one instead of being taught by a digital teacher.
In the last 7 or 8 weeks, yet again, we've had to ask our kids to be resilient, above and beyond their years, really. Having gone through a pandemic and now this, it's a real challenge. And I think the key thing is it's the disruption to their education and their learning.
We are at UTC. It's still good because we still get an education, but it would have been better if we could have experienced going through Year 7 at Scorby.
The school is expecting more temporary classrooms in the new year, and it's hoping to get all 1,000 pupils back on site by March.
We're really proud and humbled by the way the staff and students have responded. We make sure that we keep in touch with the students who are off site as well, the Year 7 students, and we're definitely trying our hardest to make sure they feel part of Scorby School.
The Department for Education has put Scorby School on a rebuild programme, but in the meantime, staff and students will have to work around the crumbling concrete. Michelle Lyons, BBC Look North, Scarborough.
So disruptive, isn't it, to the start of the school year for those young students? James Bowen is from the National Association of Head Teachers. I asked him if schools like Scorby had been given a time frame for when the work to remove the rack would be completed.
Well, this is one of the problems at the moment, that for many schools, they don't know when things will be sorted. There are some schools that have been given clear timeframes by the Department for Education in terms of when those works will be done, but there's quite a few others that are still waiting to find out when the works will be done. Some of them are still waiting for the temporary classrooms, so the lack of a clear timeframe is a real problem for some.
And what sort of issues is that creating for schools?
Well, I think that the biggest problem you have is if you have to close part of your school and pupils are being educated at home, try as you might, and schools will be trying really hard to make sure the education continues. We've learned from the pandemic, it's not the same if you're being educated from home as if you're in the classroom. So those schools where pupils are currently out or they're not in for the entire week, that causes a real problem in terms of the teaching and learning you're trying to deliver.
There was obviously huge media interest about this at the beginning of the school term. Have the government acted fast enough on it?
Well, it's interesting. In some schools' cases, we've seen the government have acted quite quickly, and some schools have told us they've got the support they needed, particularly when there wasn't too much of this concrete. But in the more complex cases, we're still seeing schools that really feel like they've been left without the support they need. So if you're a school and you've got pupils learning from home and you've got no clear idea when that's going to be fixed, it's not going to feel like it's going fast enough for you.
The government has said it will cover all the financial costs of the building itself, but have there been any financial implications for schools caused by disruption of having to move children to different campuses, etc.?
At the moment, the government do seem to be sort of being good to their promise, and they are seeming to cover most of the costs. So initially they said they wouldn't cover things like transport. We're now seeing the government saying actually as long as those costs are linked to the building works or the closure of the school, that they will cover some of those costs. So on the whole, most of the costs do seem to be being covered, but there's always just small little costs that you can't necessarily account for. So there are certainly schools that find themselves somewhat out of pocket because of this.
James Bowen, thanks for your time. Work on a £100 million regeneration of the Leeds Bradford Airport terminal building is due to start by the end of this year. The project includes the construction of a 3-storey extension. Now, last year, plans for a new terminal were abandoned because of planning delays. Our transports correspondent Spencer Stokes has more.
Leeds Bradford Airport's 1960s terminal will remain, but within 3 years the interior will be transformed. Add on a new 3-storey extension and the airport sees its passenger floor space grow by 40%.
We have been working towards this for so long. This is the culmination of about 15 years of effort put into how can we develop this airport and how can we deliver for Leeds, Bradford and Yorkshire the airport experience that they deserve.
The plan was originally given the go-ahead in 2019, before being abandoned in favour of a more ambitious scheme to build an all-new terminal at the other end of the runway. But that ran into planning difficulties because the application also asked for permission to operate more flights, some of them at night time. The government got involved and the airport withdrew its plan, returning to the 2019 extension.
What we're coming along and doing is basically gutting significant parts of the existing building and then refitting the interior with something which makes an awful lot more sense. So what people will see is probably something very similar to what they would expect in a brand new purpose-built terminal.
The 3-storey extension will be built in this car park. It'll offer more seating, faster security, new shops and a larger baggage reclaim area. A revamp welcomed by passengers.
I think it's a terrible airport.
Yeah, I mean, if it improves it, it will help. But yeah, the airport isn't the best.
I think it's all right, but if they want to improve it, then go for it.
It needs upgrading, yeah, definitely. But it is what it is, and it'll be a few years before the new one's built, I expect.
2026 is the target completion date, with LBA hoping new facilities will deliver more passengers. Are you still aiming for 7 million passengers by 2030? And will that mean more nighttime flying?
We've been very consistent, really, for a number of years now, that the market demand for our services is going to grow to 7 million passengers by the year 2030. While some of that demand will be for early morning departures, the vast majority of that demand is through the day, and whether we had more night flights or whether we didn't have more night flights, we would still grow to 7 million passengers a day, just in different ways.
Opponents say that figure is controversial because Leeds City Council hasn't given its approval to the 7 million passenger target. With or without growth, the £100 million project will upgrade a terminal that's waited a long time for significant investment. Spencer Stokes, BBC Look North, Leeds Bradford Airport.
Sheffield Crown Court has heard how a prison employee and a prisoner she was in a relationship with worked together to smuggle drugs into Lindholm Prison near Doncaster. Mental health nursing assistant Amy Hatfield and 35-year-old inmate Joseph Whittingham are accused of being part of the biggest ever smuggling ring uncovered by police. 17 people are being sentenced over the next few days for their part in the illegal operation. Next tonight, children and young people in Yorkshire's hospitals are at risk of increased trauma and mental health problems because of a lack of health play specialists, that's according to campaigners. There are only 38 registered play therapists in our region. Now, they help young patients cope with stressful hospital stays. The government says it's increasing funding for mental health support. Abagiola has been to Airedale Hospital in Keighley to find out more.
Where does it go?
Sessions like this help 6-year-old William prepare for hospital appointments. He has a genetic condition and needs regular treatment. Maria is a play therapist and her expertise has had a big impact.
When Maria wasn't here, it took us 3 attempts to get a scan with sedation each time, and he kept waking up. Whereas previously we'd had a scan with Maria with us and we'd prepared for it, and we managed to get it done first time. And we all got really emotional in that appointment because it was such a difference compared to how it had been prior to that.
Whoa, crash!
Play in itself is really important in a child's life. It's how they learn and how they develop anyway, but especially in a hospital setting, play is something that children are familiar with, so coming into the playroom, it helps make the whole environment less frightening for them.
Health play charity Starlight say this type of therapy is vital to help reduce fear and pain in young patients, but there's a lack of therapists.
Every year in Yorkshire, 120,000 hospital admissions are for children, but there are only 38 registered play specialists to work with them, and 89% of our hospital trusts have no specific budget for play.
Delilah and Rowan have been spending time in the playroom with Maria while they're on the children's ward.
It distracts you from whatever's wrong with you, and it's some time to get away from everything. It made me less nervous about it.
We asked the Department for Health to comment specifically about play therapy provision, but they replied more generally and told us they're investing record sums to boost children's mental health support.
Having this now, I wish we'd have had that before. They should have it in every hospital, Monday to Sunday.
Charities are now fundraising to support sessions like these, but they'd like the government to be on the same page. Abby Jayola, BBC Look North, Keighley.
Well, they do such an important job, don't they? Now, I think it's safe to say that many of us want to recycle more, but it can be quite confusing, can't it? It's sometimes not clear which items will be accepted and what we need to do before chucking something in the bin. Well, today, a major household waste company in Yorkshire invited us on patrol to see the challenges that they face. Research has found that more than 80% of people admit putting rubbish in recycling bins without being really sure if it can actually be recycled in the first place. Almost a fifth of items are often too dirty or contaminated to be suitable for recycling, and that costs the council millions of pounds. While another survey found that 70% of respondents think that labels are really quite confusing. Mark Ansell has been out with bin crews in Doncaster.
These have been filled fine, but if your bin's full of the wrong things, your refuse collector can refuse to empty it. But that can lead to residents being physically or verbally abusive. When it's bad, what do you mean? What do they do?
Yes, one time she told me, I kill you for that because you're not taking the bin.
How did it make you feel when somebody said that they were going to kill you?
Bad, because, you know, you do your job.
Just let us do his job. No, you know, I mean, there's no need for it, but we've all got a job to do, so let us do it.
Residents in Doncaster have to recycle using these two bins. You've got the glass recycling in the green box, and then you've got paper and plastic bottles and also tins that have been cleaned out in the blue bin. But there are two different types of contamination. Firstly, things that just cannot be recycled, like the Tetra Paks, and then different types of plastics that can't go in. And there's also the food tins and jars. They need rinsing out before going in. Once the recycling's been collected from the streets of Doncaster, it's brought to this massive depot in Kirk Sandal. Just look at some of the things that have been put in the blue recycling bin. This gas canister, for example, a tyre, and even some cables. And the problem is getting worse. On average in Doncaster, back in 2020, there was a contamination rate of 10%. That has jumped to 16% now. That's 16% of the materials going into the recycling bin that is contaminated.
Try and be pure recycles rather than poor recycles. And I say, if you're unsure of what items to put in your bin, check the calendar, check your annual calendar, check the website, and if in doubt, then just please leave it out.
The more contaminated recycling, the less money councils get back from selling the raw materials, so it pays to use your bins properly. Mark Ansell, BBC Look North, Doncaster.
In football, Bradford's players are backing caretaker manager Kevin MacDonald to get the job permanently after their 1-0 win away at Wimbledon. Substitute Manny Osadebe scored the winning goal, and speaking to BBC Radio Leeds after the game, he said the locker room is fully behind MacDonald, who stepped in after Mark Hughes was sacked as manager.
He has great ideas and everyone's bought into it, you know. He's motivating, the standards he sets are high, it's clear, you know, and it's front foot, it's more our standard, it's more our style of play, suiting the players that we have, you know, dynamic, energetic, you know, and he's done really well. I mean, he's done really good, yeah.
Elsewhere in League Two, there were 4 goals for Doncaster Rovers against Sutton United, including this from Zane Westbrook. First effort rebounded, but the follow-up went in, contributing to the Rovers' 4-1 win at home. But Harrogate could only manage 1 goal, a penalty against the dominant Stockport County. They lost 3-1 at home. Now, squash has been named as one of 4 new sports at the Olympic Games in Los Angeles in 2028. The announcement has been welcomed by the former squash world champion, Sheffield's Nick Matthew. Matthew won Commonwealth gold 3 times, including at Glasgow in 2014, and is a 3-time world champion. He now coaches with the national team and is happy that young squash players will now get to compete at the very highest level.
Oh, it can only help to grow it, you know, from grassroots all the way through to the sort of world-class greatness level. You know, I've been dying to be able to go into a school and tell someone that they can be an Olympic champion at this sport, Olympic gold medalist. I think everyone knows about the Olympics and what they stand for and what they mean. But it, of course, gives the game a boost all around the world.
More than 10,000 runners took part in the York Marathon at the weekend, amongst them Harvey Gratian, Harry's son, who ran in memory of his dad. It was an emotional day for him and for many others, all finding a way through those tough miles by focusing on causes close to their hearts. Here's a flavour of the day.
3, 2, 1, and the
Doing the marathon, obviously running the 10th and he ran the first. It's just a way to keep me close to my dad and honour his name in the best way possible.
It's really great support out there. The crowds are amazing, so they got me through.
Absolutely brilliant. Started a cold day, ended up lovely.
Awesome in this moment. Very emotional, but very elated at the same time. I didn't think it would overcome me quite like it did.
Really moving to see that. And you were there, weren't you, Amy, running as well?
I was. Yeah, it was so lovely to see Harry's family on the start line cheering Harvey on. As we saw there, that gorgeous picture of Harry on the back of Harvey's back was really lovely. I know that really spurred him on. 3 hours 18 he did it in. That's amazing. Isn't it? Well done, Harvey. Your dad would be super proud. And I know that your dad would really love this final story. Dust off your shoulder pads. BBC Radio York are celebrating their 40th anniversary by holding a very special 80s music night in aid of BBC Children in Need. It's on Friday the 17th of November at the Citadel in York. Tickets are free. Head to bbc.co.uk/shows and tours. Click on shows and look for the BBC Radio York 80s night for details. You'll also have the opportunity to make a donation to BBC Children in Need. It's actually this story that I think Harry would like a lot. There are many people, I should say, who are ready to stand up and champion Yorkshire and its countless traditions and quirks. But one man's classes on Yorkshire dialect have become so popular, he's had to start a waiting list. Rod Dimblediz wants to keep sayings and speech patterns alive for future. So, let's say how do to Tom Ingle, who went lecking for a gander.
When once stamped on every face, a yam to meal you can share.
Inside Keighley Library, Rod Dimbleby is keeping the sound of Yorkshire alive.
Well, they've been saying we've been losing it since the back end of the 19th century, and it is still about, but I think there's no doubt that another couple of generations, and unless we do something about it.
Why do you think people are fascinated by it?
Well, it's such a lovely language, it's so colourful, it's so expressive, and it's just wonderful for storytelling.
We are completely stuck on the first sentence.
The first sentence, nice day for a stroll. How do you say that in Yorkshire?
Rod's got more than a class full of people ready to wax linguistically lyrical.
By gum, my mother had a plum. She put it in tea pot, by gum. She poured out tea, out rolled plum, right across the table, by gum. Have you heard that one? No, you're not a Yorkshire lad then, are you? Where does it come from?
Unfortunately, London. I'm surprised I'm allowed in this room, actually.
The BBC was told for years not to have a Yorkshire accent, otherwise you won't get on the television. Well, you can actually do it now and still get on the television, so...
I'm sorry, we're going to have to edit you out now. Can you wow me with any phrases in particular?
Well, I can't foil brass is one of them, because I can't foil... I've got money in my pocket, but I don't want to buy it because it's too expensive.
I can't foil
it, T-H-O-I-L.
Can't foil the brass.
Can't foil brass.
Some Broadacres banter rises and falls with industry. Others are victims of time.
Somebody's got to keep band in nick.
The band in the neck?
Yeah.
What on earth does the bandit mean?
Well, it's an expression that came out of the mills, and it refers to the pulley driving the machinery, and if the band weren't seated properly, things wouldn't run smoothly. She weren't a bad-bottomed woman.
What? She weren't a bad-bottomed woman? You're going to have to explain that one.
Nothing to do with her physical attributes. It means she was a good, decent woman. A woman of good models.
The bottom come into
Well, at the bottom, she was good, solid base to her, you see.
OK. These days, I don't think you get away with that without going on a completely different sort of course.
No, it is a 19th century expression, that, yes, certainly.
Right then, happen it's time I said civvy. If tha knows, tha knows. Tom Ingle, BBC Look North. Don't worry, I'm not going to do the accent anymore.
That knows, brilliant. Reet, lad, how's the doing?
I'm very, very well, actually, and I'm going to tell you it's going to be siling it down at the end of the week. That's proper Yorkshire,
Very
isn't
good.
it? But before we get on to the forecast, that is an amazing picture. That's that halo around the sun. That's caused by the light refracting through ice crystals. That's cirrus cloud, so thanks to Sue for that. And this next picture is a stunning sunrise, and there'll be something similar again in the morning, not just in Scarborough, but across Yorkshire, because there'll be more of that high cloud around. If you've got any pictures, you want to send them in on Twitter, on Instagram, or on the Weather Watcher website. So a very changeable week, potentially some adverse weather later in the week and into the weekend as things turn much more unsettled. Low pressure in charge, so a fine day tomorrow, but we'll have rain Wednesday night. And then this low pressure pivots, we get a strong easterly. That's a really bad setup. It means persistent and heavy rain, especially over the river catchments of the Pennines. So Thursday through to Sunday, some spots could see in excess of 100 millimetres of rain. Certainly the Environment Agency will keep an eye on that one. Now you can see the milky skies. That's the cirrus cloud that made the sunshine hazy during the course of today. Through this evening and overnight, then it looks largely dry, clear spells, a widespread frost just like last night. There could be the odd shower in more eastern areas. We'll see lowest temperatures close to freezing point across some rural parts of North and West Yorkshire. Tomorrow's high water times, there we are, 6:11 in Scarborough. The forecast for tomorrow, fairly straightforward. The odd shower in the east at first, otherwise it looks dry, bright with spells of sunshine, a little on the hazy side at times. Temperatures around 14 or 15 degrees, and that is the forecast.
Now, lad, I hear that you are the president of the Yorkshire Dialect Society.
I am, how exciting.
So that knows what that's talking about. Reet, that's it, good night.